I would like to welcome you here this evening, and it gives me great joy to be able to share some of my ideas with you. Pilgrimage on the Path of Love was born from my experiences of living in India. As I traveled to different places, India became my teacher, revealing different facets of her multicolored designs, shapes, and patterns to my gaze, in order to teach me what I needed to know on my path to liberation. These experiences and subsequent revelations occurred in such rapid succession that I felt that the book I wanted to write was unraveling scene by scene in the very life I was living. It was writing itself before my eyes, and I simply penned down the insights I gained as the drama unfolded. I was both the main character and the silent witness behind the mask. The stage was India, the country to which I feel most deeply connected. Shantila undertakes a pilgrimage to the heights of the Himalayas. Her outward journey mirrors an inward journey in which she comes face to face with her innermost feelings, hopes, and desires. Through the voice of her higher self and the experiences she has during her meditations, as well as through her memories, dreams, and reflections, the reader is led into the interior world of a woman on the spiritual path. The outer landscape becomes the catalyst which enlivens the inner voice of her soul. Her journey from the plains of New Delhi to the heights of the Himalayas is symbolic of an inner spiritual journey which she must take to reach a deeper awareness of her inner self and an acceptance of the cosmic plan for her life. In the Himalayas especially, I always experience a deepening of inner silence, a drawing inwards of all my faculties of perception towards their source, the infinite silence of the self. This is a place saturated with the prayers of seekers of liberation from time immemorial. This feeling is expressed in the book in the following passage. I feasted my eyes on the sunlight scattered over the landscape, the massive grandeur of the mountains and the silver streams. Though I felt full, I never tired of drinking in their beauty. I wondered what treasure might be hidden among these ancient mountains and whether I was destined to find it. This journey high up into the Himalayas, would it bear the fruit of my life? Would I drink of the nectar of immortality in this divine abode? Would the deep silence of the Himalayas call awake the deity hidden deep within the cave of my own heart? And would the flaming light of the sun ignite the pyre at the altar within the inner shrine? Would the pure truths that were etched in the rock-cut gorges along the way, and which scintillated through the lacy fibers of the firs, unfold its golden petals in me, never to be shrouded by darkness again? How many unnamed saints and sages had climbed the steep and sloping cliffs of these mountains in search not of gold, but in search of their own inner wealth. How many ascetics had performed arduous penances here as an offering to thee? Now I had come, far flung from the shores of New York and the greening hills of England, to lay my thirsting heart at thy feet. Would I return to England or even America alone, empty-handed, or would I carry the transparent dignity of the infinite, fully awakened within me? These questions rose and sank as the bus plied its way through the Parvati Valley, up to Mandi, and through Kulu on the last stretch of the journey to Manali. The unique aspect of this book is that it bridges the gulf between the East and West in the personage of the main character, Shantila Martin. As her name indicates, Shantila represents a blending of East and West. Although born in the West, her natural inclination leads her to the East. The main quality of the East is the heart. The main quality of the West is the intellect, or analytical aspect of life. The inner spiritual value of life is very lively in Eastern culture, whereas in the West, the outer material value is more lively. This dichotomy between the heart and mind, or inner and outer value of life, is totally transcended in the state of full awakening. In the state of enlightenment, the heart and mind are in perfect harmony with each other, and life is lived in balance, in fulfillment. This balance between the inner and outer aspects of life, between the heart and the mind, is the state which is so needed in today's world, a balanced blending of the best of both the Eastern and Western approaches to life. Recently, I returned to India after living in Switzerland for 1 year. And when I got out of the plane, I felt as if I was stepping onto a different planet. There was such a difference on the feeling level. There is so much love here, my inner voice spoke to me. That feeling of love is what keeps me in India. In the book, Shantila meets people from different cultures who add to her understanding of the purpose of life and the nature of love. In the Tibetan monastery, Shantila befriends Yuki from Japan. Yuki tells Shantila, "Don't try to plan, Shanti, just be simple. We must learn to become simpler and to trust. The future will take care of itself." From a Tibetan shopkeeper, Shantila learns about purity of heart. A pure heart, being kind to others, is more important than how much one prays or reads the scriptures. We say in Tibet, the heart is more important. If anyone reads the scriptures but is unkind, then it is not good. He is not a good man. But if there is both a pure heart and reading the scriptures and praying, then very good. Shantila reveals her feelings about life and love to the foreigners she meets. The meaning of life is hidden in love. It's simple, but we haven't grasped it. Look at the mess we've made of things in the world. The search for the Holy Grail, wasn't that a search for pure love? Isn't everyone aiming for the same thing? What is it? To touch another person's heart is more important than all the money in the world, or even fame or possessions. What's the meaning of all this? Why are we here? Isn't it to learn how to love? When alone, Shantila reflects, it's up to us to be, to feel what is right, to feel what direction to take, to feel each moment as it comes, and to be guided by our inner voice, the voice of truth. End quote. Regarding my own life, I can only say that I've always trod the less trodden path, heeded the call of a different drummer, followed my inner voice. It was a path not always understood by my peers, and yet it was the path that felt right to me. Since childhood, the experience of communion with nature has brought me closer to the source of joy within myself. Why? Is it not because nature is a mirror of our own soul? The journey to Ladakh, the lost Shangri-La, the little Tibet at the top of the world, brought me face to face with the reality never before encountered. I traveled by bus for 3 days, crossed the Rotang Pass, traveled beyond the tree line to the summit of the soaring mountain peaks. From 3,978 meters to 4,800 meters to 5,200 meters. It was definitely the most remarkable journey in my life. This experience is described in the book. The mountains resembled huge waves frozen in stillness, carved by the almighty hand of an invisible artist, tinted with luminous brush strokes of pink, salmon, deep purple, gray, copper, peach, brown, and pale yellow. They spoke of worlds as yet undiscovered, awash with the pure and brilliant energy of life. I felt as if I was entering the very womb of creation and beholding the naked flesh of the earth, raw, unadorned. It was as if I was standing in the mixing bowl of creation, seeing the beginning of the world taking shape. The sight of nature unmasked in all its singular beauty, so primitive, so full of energy, was utterly captivating. The primal colors of creation were glowing like the flesh and bones and skin of Mother Earth. It appeared like a picture of the skeletal structure of the earth, or rather more, like the very body of God and the pure, vast, unbounded dimensions of his divine mind. All the lines of his thought were so radiant and so grand. Could it be the flow of his divine mind? The whole creation, a mirror image of that flow. I felt as if I was seeing all the convolutions, lines, and textures which had instantaneously been created when the earth first breathed, beholding the bulging muscles of Mother Earth as her body grew big with life, beholding the Divine Mother naked with innumerable bellies and breasts full with milk, flowing pools of milk streaming from the rounded summits of the mountains. Every curve of her divine body was simple, rounded, and pregnant with mystery. It was as if she spoke, saying, "Take me as I am, free, naked, simple, and unadorned. Through the fullness of emptiness, enter the inner shrine of my being and discover the fullness of fullness." There was water, deep blue mountain pools, and ribbons of silver shimmering in the twilight air, but no human habitation for miles and miles and miles. It was as if we were alone with God's thoughts, alone in the vast abyss of creation. Are vibrant with spiritual power. The more sensitive, awake, and open one's heart, the more one can feel the cosmic energy in such places. Meditation makes one more sensitive and also influences one's relationships. In my book, The Inner Dimension of Love is touched upon in the nuances of feeling that color the brief moments Shantila shares with the Lama Tashi. As a result of her meditations, the spiritual dimension of love blossoms in Shantila's awareness, and she begins to understand her relationship with Tashi on a deeper level. This unfoldment of awareness is described in the following passage. Tashi leaned forward on the divan, and I felt his touch, though we did not touch. He opened his lips as if to speak. No sound came forth. Yet I heard the voiceless voice of his soul echo in the stillness. We sat wed to silence for some time, and as ordained by the gods, no one entered that space during our communion. Later, Shantila reflects on this experience. I recognize myself in him. Something in him calls awake my inner being. I want to run into his arms, but this is part of the illusion. This I know, and yet the feeling continues. We have met, and our hearts have commingled in the heart of God, where the body is as wind, a golden breath on the lake of pure consciousness. There, in the shrine of the infinite being, there are no arms or legs or bodies to touch. There is only one eternal melody shimmering in the ocean of pure love. Significant influence that living in India has had on my life is that my faith and trust in the divine will has become much stronger. Shantila represents an opening of consciousness toward the East, a loving acceptance of the wisdom the East has to offer on our path to liberation. Shantila is moving toward a universal vision of life in which all streams of wisdom are appreciated. She is being directed by our highest self toward the unchanging source of wisdom, which is the basis of all of life's diversified expressions. Shantila represents the blossoming of perception of the spiritual wholeness of life. In the book, Shantila is able to interact freely with people of all cultures and religions, and each interaction adds to the fullness of her life. As she travels, her faith and trust increase, and her small individual ego-driven will becomes attuned to the cosmic divine will. This feeling of faith is expressed in the book. As we rolled through town after town, under the cover of darkness, the voice of the inner self echoed in the hollow cavern of my heart. Did not the same divine being who fashioned the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the wide flowering earth, and soaring mountain glades, and silver streams descending like songs from the high hills, also design the intricate, interwoven pattern of my life? And does he not know what will bring me most happiness and the deepest peace and fulfillment in life? And is he not all good and infinitely compassionate and merciful? Like a father, mother of all beings, she is guiding life to perfection. Thy will be done. Surely thou knowest what is best for me. O make me thy instrument, O Lord. Make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there's suffering, that I may bring joy. Where there's darkness, that I may bring light. Where there's despair, that I may bring hope. Where there's doubt, that I may bring faith. Shantila's meditation, described in the following passage, also brings her closer to an eternal source of peace within herself. I returned to my room to meditate. As soon as I closed my eyes, the body dissolved into space, and the circle of awareness expanded outward to infinity. I became one with the farthest reaches of the universe. The awareness of the body was gone. Only consciousness, like a radiant orb of light, with countless rays of golden threads, spread out to touch the hem of the infinite. It was as if I had no end or beginning. Consciousness was a pure mirror of life, in which the whole of existence breathed in ever-expanding waves of joy and peace. Never before had I felt so unbounded, so full, so complete. Old habits of thinking were ground to dust in this moment of coming face to face with the eternal truth of life. The bonds of ignorance, the pangs of separation, the illusion of fear, doubt, and distrust, all momentarily melted away in the sunlight of pure consciousness. When I opened my eyes, I thanked God for having brought me so far on the road to freedom. In the East, there's a saying, Yatra yatra mano yati, tatra tatra samadhyayaha. Wherever the mind may turn, he sees the one and gets immersed in him. When the heart is purified, one can see God everywhere, in everyone and everything. The pilgrimage Shantila has taken on the path to self-knowledge leads her to the realization that there is a cosmic plan to life, an inherent order or intelligence in creation which fashions all things in a purposeful way. She realizes that every aspect of life is part of the divine plan and that it is unfolding in perfection. As she listens to the chanting of the lamas, the inner silence is enlivened and her inner vision unfolds. This realization is expressed in the following passage. In that moment of truth, I realized that so many times we look outside, searching for a perfection which already exists inside all the time. We search for the perfect companion, the perfect piece of music, the perfect cloth to wear, the perfect house, the perfect meal. But the perfection is already everywhere. Omnipresent, it evades our gaze. Like the musk deer who carries the most heavenly fragrance within itself, who wanders in search of that divine fragrance, covering countless miles of hills and forests, roaming far and wide, until it finds that the fragrance is created by itself. Like that deer are we, in search of the fulfillment which will never wane, and which exists eternally deep within our own heart. But where can we find it? Unseen is that, unmeasured by time or space, unheard except in silence, undigested except when cooked by the inner fire deep within the temple of the heart. We find it only by becoming one with it. By leaning inward toward the music, the dance and the dancer become one. In the silence between the Lama's prayers, I realized that there was nowhere to go and nothing to do. I realized that each moment contained all we could ever seek to know, to feel, and to believe. Each moment contained perfection. I remembered who I was, a simple child, an aged pilgrim, a mother of creation, a human being made in the image of the eternal being, that one, unbreathed upon, ever giving life to all, ever reborn, ever the same. The Lama's prayers reawakened something in me which had forgotten the interwoven fabric of love, of which all that is made. The voices of the Lamas, filled with kindness and compassion, gently lifted aside the veil from my eyes and heart. My life, unchanged on the surface, carried within it a new level of peace. I tasted the nectar of a love which came not from people, not from outside, but from an ever-flowing fullness deep within. This love nourished my heart and enabled me to nourish others without losing anything or feeling I was doing anything. It was just a sense of being, just a natural flow, an outpouring of the Spirit. The essential message of this book is that the pilgrimage each individual must embark upon is to the inner shrine of their own heart, where the fountain of love is ever flowing in fullness. This flow of pure love is the source of infinite happiness, health, and fulfillment in life. As we move toward that center of our being, every experience can guide us, teach us, and inspire us to unfold different facets of our being until ultimately we are able to embrace the fullness of life and share that inner fullness with everyone we meet. At the end of the book, Shantila arrives at a wholeness born of an expansion of consciousness. The value of this book at the present time is that it shows us that we can widen our perception and embrace a new level of unity in the midst of differences, which is so vital in today's world. This book shows us that everyone and anyone can be our teacher, because all beings are reflections of the one intelligence that governs life everywhere. The book is of global significance in today's world because it fosters an awareness of the deeper values of life, the inner spiritual dimension, and inspires us to appreciate the diversity of cultures that form our global world family. As the collective consciousness in the world rises, the conflicts and dissensions in the world will be transcended by the vision of a higher truth, the truth of universal love, the awareness of the common thread of life linking all living beings on earth. Only then will we be living in harmony with the highest ideals of human life. In the universe, there's gender, male and female, and is my view of love feminine, or is it for everyone? I feel that it's for everyone. Every human being has both within them, the male and the female. We're composed of that unity, that feminine quality and the male quality. But in men, the male quality is more dominant, and in women, the feminine quality is more dominant. But both qualities exist in every human being. There's the male and the female. That's part of the makeup of every human being. Both of those qualities, the feminine quality and the male quality, which is more analytical, and the feminine quality is more sensitive, more heart-oriented. But both of these qualities exist within everyone, and I feel that the quality that I'm expressing in the book is more from the woman's point of view. It's about a woman's experiences on the path to liberation. But I feel that ultimately that truth of the universality of pure love, that is the underlying fabric of life, I feel that's relevant to every human being. It's, yeah.
I just
See nature and what nature inspires. The question is, how would I see a volcano or a landslide or something that happened, which could be quite cataclysmic in the Himalayas? What those natural occurrences inspire in us, it will be different, having to do with our own physiological makeup, with our perception, our sensitivity to nature. Everyone's sensitivity to nature is different, depending on their inner awareness and their experiences and their life. That colors our perception of nature. So how everyone would see the events, the natural events, the waterfalls, the landslides, the different occurrences that are present in nature really depends on our own inner vision, how we respond to nature. And that's different for every human being. That will be really dependent on, even, it might be different from one year you might see it in one way, and the following year you might see the same occurrence in a totally different way. It just depends on the state of one's awareness at that time. Yes? The occurrences that are part of nature, my perception of it is that when there's a destructive occurrence like a landslide, or the river Ganges overflows and millions of acres of lands are washed away, and many people have lost their homes. I see it as a reaction of nature to something which has been out of accord with harmony, out of harmony with the natural flow of life in that area. I see that as a response of nature which is a result of some violations of natural law which have caused that very damaging effect in the atmosphere. So I think that when people are living in harmony with the natural laws in the area, then nature supports their life and supports their growth and evolution in the area. But when there's some violation, these things cannot be understood intellectually, because we cannot fathom the deepest levels of why all the different occurrences happen in nature. But when one is living in harmony with the natural laws in the area, then I believe that the natural laws will support the life, the growth, and evolution of the people in the area. But when there's some influence which is out of harmony with the natural laws, then nature erupts, and there's some damaging influence, which is really, I see it as a kind of purification which is going on, which is leading to more harmony. In the end, more harmony will result, but sometimes there's a purification process which has to come first, and sometimes that is very. It could be destructive, and.
Thank you.
Okay. The question is the cave inside, and whether that was externalized outside, and am I phrasing it?
Yeah, that's right.
And okay, well, when one meditates, one transcends the surface level of the mind, and one goes deeper and deeper and deeper into a state of silence. And what it is as if one could say one is entering the cave of the heart. One is entering that silent temple, which is apart from the outer busy chaos of the world. One is going to that silent source of peace, of harmony, of love, of fulfillment, that temple within the heart. Sometimes it's called a cave, sometimes it's called a temple, but it just gives the experience of a silent place which is untouched by the outer world of change. It's a state beyond change. So in a sense you could say that's a cave, because a cave is secluded. A cave is protected, and that sense of going inward to that level of silence, that level of peace, you could say that it's the home of all knowledge. That's where the source of knowledge resides within every human being. It's also the source of peace. It's the source of love. It's a source of purity. So that's the sense of going in. And as far as the outward, in nature, the mountains, the Himalayas, they represent a place where seekers of liberation have gone to find that silence, to find that ability to commune with the self, the Atman, that level which is separate from the world, which is protected. The mountains represent that inner stability, that unchanging level of life. The Himalayas represent that home which is reserved for spiritual seekers, for people who want to reach a state of perfection in their communion with God. So this is just in India, traditionally, people have gone in search of that knowledge of the self, and traditionally they've gone to the Himalayas to find a teacher, to find a master, to live a life more focused on silence. So it's something which has become associated with the desire for perfection, the desire for liberation, and it is traditionally a place which is reserved, which is associated in people's minds with seekers of liberation, the Himalayas. So that's an outer symbol of that, an aspiration for a higher communion with the power that is responsible for the whole of existence.